Hey guys, Luke here. I just wanted to touch on something really quick. I saw a post in our Facebook group this morning from a Magdalene, and she trained for a half marathon, and it didn't go very well. Mr. PR by 3 minutes, but she also said it was cold. Whatever. There's a lot of reasons why the race didn't go well for her. And the biggest problem is now that she can't decide on whether or not she should use that time as her marathon training time, or should she use her previous PR. She says it's going to make a difference of it's roughly 5 minutes. I think it was like 3:13 if she would use one time, 3:18 if she used one of the other times. And so that's a big problem, and I think there's some issues with that, right? And so the first is she kind of answered the question herself. She said she feels fitter than she ever has. It was just a bad race. Things didn't go her way. It was apparently pretty cold, especially for her. It just didn't race well, right? And there's a big difference between that and then just trying to race above your fitness, right? So I think that's what we have to address that, right? And so to me, the biggest thing is that you're placing a lot of emphasis on what the outcome of your training is, right? And so when an outcome goal, we're saying, what was the outcome of it? Did you run a time? Did you place a certain way? Whatever the case is, what was the outcome of the race? Not a process goal where did you learn how to train more effectively? Did you increase the amount of volume that you could tolerate on a regular basis? Things like that. Those are all process goals. The outcome goals are, did you race the time you wanted to? Did you reach your goal time? Did you reach your place? Did you qualify for Boston? Those types of things. Those are outcome goals. And so we do this a lot. Is we place a lot of how we're going to move forward on the outcome. And so this is particular in her case because she didn't reach the outcome that she wanted. Now she's questioning whether or not she's fit enough to race at the marathon the time she wants to race. And I think that's a big problem, right? When we place too much emphasis on the outcome. Obviously we want certain things. We don't want to spend 18 weeks training for a race and not have it go our way. But it doesn't mean that we're not fit, right? It doesn't mean that we're not fit enough to race that time. And like she said, she was already feeling more fit than she ever has in her life. So is she in shape to run the faster time? Probably. It just didn't happen on that day, right? And so I think those are the things you have to look at when you're taking a step back and look at the whole picture. Now, like if you said, hey, I trained hard and I went out and I executed the race perfectly, it just fell apart at the end. You're probably trying to punch above your weight a little bit, and you might need to take a step back on the goal moving forward. That's probably more of a better representation of where you're at than what you thought you were, right? But in her case, like she trained really well. Seems like she handled the training really well, and then she just got into a situation on race day where the race didn't provide the result she wanted. But it doesn't mean that she's not fit enough to go after that time, right? And so that's the big thing I want people to look at, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be the outcome, right? If I'm training for a 3:15 marathon and I'm running a half marathon segment to see if that's possible, I handled all the training, the tempos went well, all those things went well, but we just had a bad day. Doesn't mean I can't run 3:15. No, as long as you learned how to train, you can handle the training. And that's where you have to be honest with yourself too. Like if you knew you were probably stretching it a little bit in the training, you're probably a little bit over your head a little bit on paces and stuff like that, and you really kind of more survived the training than you did thrive in the training, then yeah, it's probably a little aggressive. You might want to back off on that goal time, because we know if we extrapolate that out from like a half marathon into a full marathon, the amount of time for misery is going to be a lot bigger, right? So we want to avoid that at all possible. But for a lot of people, just because you didn't reach that goal time, but you did everything else well, it doesn't mean that you have to take a bigger step back than where you're really at. So that's the one thing I really wanted to touch on this video. So I hit all that. I don't think I necessarily need to hit anything else on that. But in any case, think about those things when you're wrapping up a segment. In this case, she's moving right from a half marathon into a full marathon segment, and so she probably needs to make those decisions fairly quickly. I will say this. So she was saying, okay, the difference in time between what I ran and what I thought I was going to run, it's going to mean between me running a 3:13 marathon and a 3:18 marathon. So is it going to be the end of the world if she started at 3:18 and handled that training really well and then just kind of naturally increased those paces as the segment went on? No, it's not. It's probably going to be even more beneficial, right? But let's say she just splits that difference and says, okay, well, I'm between 313 and 318. Let's just split the difference and run 315, 316. You train at that, you still set yourself up very well to run 312, 313 in the marathon. Same thing. Whereas if she's, and it could build her confidence too, right? So she's, okay, I'm right, I'm good. She gets in the training, she feels good, those paces are naturally going to creep up a little bit anyway, right? So if I give a person, hey, you got to run your tempos at 8-minute pace, and you cheat them down to 7:55. Well, 5 seconds over 26 miles is a couple minutes, right? So it's pretty easy to see where you can easily make up a couple minutes on that because your training is just kind of naturally going to be a little bit faster anyway. So that's really the big thing. The last thing I wanted to touch on there was like, if it's like a 20-minute swing, yeah, you might want to reevaluate. But in her case, it's a pretty small window of mishap there. So it's really not going to affect a whole lot. Even if she went on the slow side of things and trained at 318, she's probably going to naturally find herself drifting towards that 313 as the training goes on. And the same thing with like a 316 if she wanted to split the difference, right? She might be in a little trouble if she starts out right at 313 and struggles a little bit with workouts. Then the doubt starts creeping in and it doesn't lead to a very good situation. So at the end of the day, make sure you set yourself up for success. But a poor race at the end of a segment doesn't necessarily mean that you're not fit enough to run that race. You have to look at the whole picture, right? And again, if it was the training that was too much for you, you probably want to back that goal time off. But if it was just the training went fine and you know that you're more fit than you were and it just didn't work out on race day, there's no need to really question that you're not able to run that. You might want to be careful starting off the next segment of training, but it doesn't mean that you're not capable of running that time at all. So, or that you're overtrained or something like that. It's just a bad day, right? Bad things happen. And the problem is when you get up to the half marathon and the marathon distance is you don't get a lot of opportunities, right? You run a half marathon, it's not like you're going to really run one the next week, especially even more particular with a marathon, right? If you have one bad marathon, it's not like you're going to just run another one the next week and make up for it. Or if you're running 5Ks and 10Ks, you can find another one in a couple of weeks and make up for a poor performance, right? So we have to make the most of those opportunities, but we also have to recognize that we're asking for everything to go perfect on one day, and then you can't hang your hat on that being the representation of your fitness if things don't go well. So I'm not going to can't answer her question particularly because I don't know much more about her training other than what she posted in the Facebook group, but I know a lot of people are in that situation, and so I think it's a good idea just to take a step back and look at the whole picture of things before moving on to that next segment where you're truly finding out where you're at as far as setting a goal time into that next segment. So hopefully that helps you, just gives you something to think about, and best of luck in your upcoming races. All right, talk to you later. See ya.